All right, well, Manso and Clay Ferraro, latest Miami Sports Pod, coming to you on the eve of the week of the NBA trade deadline. And Clay, for Heat fans, I want to start with what happened over the weekend first, and that's the trade of Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks. I think there are a lot of fans out there, let's face it, the social media world we live in, that instant, hey, they don't think of the ramifications or what it takes. Just get me a star player, right? Uh, did you at any point think that the Heat should have pursued Kyrie? And if so, did Miami miss an opportunity potentially to get a player like Kyrie? I mean, what were your initial thoughts on that?
Well, I think that every GM is only doing his or her job if you're making a call. So you have to figure out what the situation is. Ultimately, you see what happened. I mean, they without giving up a key piece of their team, their roster, they couldn't have matched what Dallas gave up.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at what the Lakers and the Clippers were offering, according to Chris Hayes and Shams Charania, the Heat couldn't have matched it. So, unless you wanted to give up Bam or Jimmy or Tyler Hero. So, I think this is kind of, and this is going to be a common theme. If you say a name, and I don't mean just you, I mean Heat fans in general, if you say a name, I'm going to ask, okay, well, what are you giving up? And, you're at this weird place where it's like, if you want a star, then maybe you consider giving up one of your key players, but everybody else is going to as well. So look, as far as Kyrie Irving goes, I'm sure that there were calls made just to see like what it would take and if there was interest, but ultimately you see the types of offers that Brooklyn was getting and the Heat couldn't have gotten there.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know for a fact that Miami really inquired about Kyrie, but I don't think they did. I think Miami internally inquired about Kyrie, meaning Andy, Pat, Spo, the brain trust, Adam Simon. I think they had conversations on, hey, he's available. What would it take? Do we really want to deal with this? I don't think it passed that level. I really don't. I think for two reasons. Number one is the obvious, and that's the controversy surrounding Kyrie. I don't think the Heat wanted to put themselves in a position to have to deal with that. As great of a basketball player as Kyrie Irving is, the baggage he comes with, the way that things have now ended on his last few stops, in particular the mess that's happened in Brooklyn, I really think the Heat looked at it and said, it's just not worth it. And then secondly, I think they looked at it from your perspective, what you just said. I think they sat there and said, look, what it's going to take, the packages other teams going to, let's focus on what we can still do at the four, and as far as depth in size, on whether we want to improve our backcourt, what we want to do in the front court. Let's look at the options that we feel we can really gather and get, as opposed to dealing with someone as toxic right now as Kyrie and given the resources that would take. So I don't think it ever advanced past that. I think we end the conversation here. Look, he's not coming to the Heat, not a member of the Heat. It is what it is. I don't think it was ever going to happen.
Yeah, and let me just add one more thing to it. I mean, you don't make that deal unless you're planning on committing to him for a long, long time because of the assets that. Right. So, like, let's just say that even if you had wanted to give up Tyler Hero, right, then you're asking yourself, okay, we're giving up Tyler Hero for a player that we are also then going to commit. So you would have had to believe in him enough to give up your biggest trade chip. And I don't know that like the long-term belief could have gotten there. That's,
No, I agree with you. So let's look. The deadline's Thursday. There are a lot of names out there. We're going to sift through all the names. I guess the question is, for a team that entered the season with the run it back theory, right? And now sits in the sixth spot as we tape in the Eastern Conference, which is right on the fringe of a play-in game, which is the last place you want to be, is a play-in game with the risk of not even making the true playoffs. When you look at that situation, how active should the Heat be?
They better be very active. And here's the thing, Will, and this is I've said this for a few weeks now. I'm not saying that you have to go out and get a star. I look back at that.
Are there any available, by the way? There really aren't.
No.
Like, we can get into more, but I don't think there's like in the past off seasons, you think of that and trade deadlines, but it's not really there this year.
Well, and you might see names like Pascal Siakam, who I don't see Toronto moving on from. OG Anunoby maybe like a borderline star. Some people may, but Toronto's supposedly asking for so much there. Okay, Chris Paul. Do you consider Chris Paul a star? Because Phoenix is clearly trying to move him.
Didn't the Heat just go through this last year with Kyle Lowry? I mean, you're going through a guy who was a star and has played at a high level, but who clearly is not in that spot anymore.
And why would they want to trade him for essentially the same situation with Lowry? And you'd also have to add more to it just to get to their stuff. So, like, those are the types of stars, quote unquote, that you would potentially be talking about. So the trade that I look at, because I'm seeing similar things that are lacking in this year's team, Remember that 2020 trade that the Heat made where they brought in Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Solomon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, wait a minute. I mean, and at that point, I think they were also looking at Danilo Gallinari as well. And that one didn't ultimately materialize to get him here. And it was like, oh, well, that would have been the move that put. No, the reality was getting those guys pushed them over the top. I'm not saying that 2023 Jay Crowder is 2020 Jay Crowder in that way, but those are the types of names that I think you're going to – it's not going to be the big name guy that's going to blow you away. We're going to go through a few names. But, Will, I think there are such glaring needs on this team right now that it's like obvious you have to upgrade. And the ones I'm looking at, perimeter defense. Go back and look how the guards were absolutely exploited in that game against the Knicks defensively. Big guys, big help. So I think the fourth or fifth worst rebounding team in the league. And I think as well as Caleb Martin has played, I think the idea that if you're going to start a small ball center in Bam, who is outstanding, and you're not going to move on from what you're doing there, it's pretty clear that you have to have somebody beside him that's going to add to that. And the other thing is they need shooting. So those are the three things to me.
Which is
shooting,
crazy,
rebounding.
Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. The shooting part, I think there's still hope that it'll come from within, that they'll get Duncan back if they don't trade him and that he shoots well. That Max is going to get going. Max has not been at the level that we've seen him in the past. I think there's still hope that internally it will get better. I don't know how much more hope you can have for Kyle Lowry making an improvement, because Kyle is a topic in his own, right? There are a few things going on right now when it comes to Kyle that the Heat have to decide. Number one is the personal situation that Kyle had been dealing with last year into this year still a factor? Is it really gotten to the point where mentally he's not there? Which, by the way, we could all understand that that's the case. As he hasn't made it public what he's dealing with, but we do know it's a serious matter they've had to deal with, and that's unfortunate. And these guys are human, and it could be part of it. Number two is he has been dealing with a knee injury, which has been flaring up now and then. Hasn't kept him out much, but early in the season when guys were out, Kyle was averaging 35 minutes a game at a stretch, top 5 in the NBA, and you wonder how much that took a toll on him. And then I think number 3 is the obvious, and that's Father Time. Is he at the point now where this isn't necessarily injury-based or personal reason-based, but just, every great player or every player, even if you're not great, gets to that point where you're just not the player you were in the past. So is it a combination of those things that he'd have to decide? Because right now, I can't think of Kyle Lowry's trade value being any lower, right? He's got a huge salary, a salary that goes into the next year at over $30 million. He's not playing well. He's still dealing with personal things that, again, could impact him moving forward. What is the asset to another team? If it's an expiring contract this year, maybe somewhat, but not next year. So I think that's a big question for the Heat. Front court help is obvious, as you mentioned. I think you need a 4. I think you need a true 4. And I love Caleb. The funny thing about Caleb isn't it bizarre that Caleb is actually, I think, exceeded what people thought he might be this year as a consistent player. Yet he's doing it so out of position, so to speak, that I think it shows how much more versatile and impactful he would be as a 3 coming off the bench for Jimmy and giving you those impactful second unit minutes as opposed to the starting minutes. So, yeah, can you get a 4? And I think the backcourt as well. Tyler's defense with Kyle's defense. Kyle is he's not blowing past people to finish, and he's letting guys blow past him to finish.
Yes.
It's like the worst combination. And it's not to pour it on. It's just the facts that Pat, Andy, and everybody have to get into. So when you look at the potential Heat targets, and look, we're just going to throw out names. These are names that have been linked to be traded, some of them to the Heat. We can delve more in depth as we go along the list. I'm just going to throw a couple names out to start. Look through some of these names and see what you think. These are some of the options we've seen, Clay. Mm-hmm. You look at a guy like Kelly Olynyk. I think that's the first one right off the bat, right? That you say to yourself, okay, can KO be that guy again? Can he come back here and help? Jay Crowder, who you referenced, Jared Vanderbilt, who's not a big scorer or good three-point shooter, but a heck of a defender at the 4 with a big wingspan. And then John Collins. We've got a few more names are going to pop up in a bit, but let's just start on that, Clay. Where do you see that? Here's the other ones you mentioned: OJ Anunoby, D'Angelo Russell, who's been linked potentially as some sort of option with Kyle, and then Zach LaVine, who kind of is the one borderline star that may become available. What do you think?
So let's go. Look, is there a way to go back to the big guys?
Yeah, I'll get you back there.
Okay, so let's go there first. So my thing with Jared Vanderbilt, because I like him a lot as a player, right? And so what I think we have to discern here is make the difference between players that we like as players versus players who we think would be good fits on the Heat. My thing with Vanderbilt is, yeah, you might not have the scoring there, but do you really need that scoring if you're going to have the starting lineup that you're currently rolling out there? Tyler Hero. Hey, let's just assume for the moment that Kyle Lowry stays in the starting lineup, okay? You might lose some of the scoring punch, the surprise scoring punch that you're getting from Caleb, but obviously you're going to get the defense and the rebounding of a guy who's a couple of inches taller. And I like what he brings. So I really like that fit. Okay. Kelly Olynyk, I like him a lot. Really like what he brought here. I think that there would certainly be that.
He could shoot the three.
Yes.
He could stretch a bit. He doesn't give you the defense, the rebounding that Vanderbilt gives you, though. Vanderbilt's got that
that's where I think I would like Vanderbilt as a better fit between the two. Like, I like Kelly Olynyk as a player, and I liked who he was and how he fit before. But I think with what this team needs right now, Vanderbilt would give you a better fit. That's assuming, and let's take Kyle Lowry out of the equation right now, because I have my thoughts on what to do there as well.
What about John Collins? What about John Collins?
So this is my thing with John Collins. And I didn't know this, but apparently throughout the league, the belief is the broken ring finger that he suffered has just destroyed his ability to shoot. And so what is he bringing you? He's not a plus defender. He's not the guy that like would do the stuff that Jared Vanderbilt would bring. Obviously, very good offensive player when he's healthy. And look, maybe he can protect the rim a little bit better than some of these guys. But
short term, are you getting him as a potential building piece for the future, given his youth and what his contract is and things like that?
No, because I think what you would have to do then, you'd have to think of this as like, all right, we're going to pay Tyler Hero. Given what we know about the Heat, which is they don't love the idea of going into the tax unless they're bringing in a legit star. I don't know that John Collins is that guy. I don't know that I've seen enough of him to say he's that guy.
To your point about his finger, when he was shooting in the upper 30 range of threes, he sure looked like that guy. Because if you got a guy that could get you 18 and 9 and can shoot 38 from three at his size and his position, I think he's a versatile kind of player that the Heat would love. And by the way, I know the Heat loved John Collins coming out of the draft. They really did. They just liked Bam better. But, I mean, they liked John Collins a lot, and they had him in pre-draft. They worked him a couple of times. He ends up going to Atlanta. He really probably developed quicker than Bam, right? When you look at it, his game was a little more polished coming out of college. His game developed quicker, and then Bam just kind of lapped him because Bam's just raw ability and ceiling was so much more. They're not similar players in that way, but I'm just talking about the path. I think John Collins, the setback of the last year, he's lost a little bit of that luster.
Yep.
Which makes me wonder, Clay, given the contract, given what you said with the finger, given the instability that he's had as far as a player and whether you think he could be back to what he was showing to be, maybe you can get him. I don't want to use the term on the cheap because you're not going to get guys like that talented on the cheap, but maybe you could get him at a discount, right? Maybe you could get him in a deal that the Hawks move on. You don't have to give up all your big assets, like you were talking about earlier, and get a guy like that as sort of a second chance at a young age to become that young star. It intrigues me, put it that way. I'm not saying that he should do it, but it intrigues me. It does.
Yeah, so I'm going and actually the reason I'm looking down and actually looking at his statistics and just to see like, all right, what would you be bringing to the table with the John Collins? And so his numbers have dropped. 3.5 points a game, and part of that could be, because of the switch or whatever that they're bringing in DeJounte Murray. I guess my thing, Will, is that if you're going to do that, then you would essentially be saying you're making a move that you don't think will make you an immediate it wouldn't put you in contender status now among Boston, Milwaukee, maybe Philly.
But with any of those guys that we just mentioned, here's the second list, the second wave of maybe a little bit more talented type players that are not so much front court, obviously.
Right.
But any of those front court guys we mentioned earlier, does that really get you over the top? Like a Kelly Olynyk, a Jared Vanderbilt, does that really get you better than Boston?
No, not on the surface. I think it would probably have to be in conjunction with another move. And I think that's the thing with John Collins is like, if you do that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you can get him for a song, given where he's, maybe I saw something that said they may value a Duncan Robinson right now because they could use a little bit more spacing, with what they've been doing with DeJounte Murray. So like maybe the value they would have, excuse me, for some of your other pieces would be enough to where you wouldn't have to give up all of your assets, so to speak, to make that happen. Whereas I think if you were to bring in a Vanderbilt, I don't think you would have to give up a whole lot. So like when I see Jared Vanderbilt, I see the type of player that would slot into the Jay Crowder part of the trade from
Yeah,
3 years ago.
except he doesn't shoot threes, and I think that's the thing I
No,
keep going back to Vanderbilt. That I may wonder is he just doesn't shoot threes. He shoots one a game. He's not a 3-point shooter. He's just not.
right. I guess I'm not saying it's a one for one player, but I'm
No,
saying
I know
like
what you're saying.
when
The
you go back,
impact, yeah.
so like then you could use another asset to go out and get the Iguodala part of that deal. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So like you could solidify something
I mean,
else,
there's
whether
always
it's
Rudy Gay. All these names that have come.
yeah,
First of all, I've had Rudy Gay rumors for 10 years already. It's like
it's gonna happen at some point.
before he retires, he'll play for the Heat.
Yeah.
There are so many intriguing guys, and I guess this is the question I think Heat fans ask all the time on social media. Ask me when I'm at the games: is can the Heat get? Or no, let me rephrase that. Who would be the piece, right, that could be available that the Heat could get and acquire before the deadline that really could make them a contender? Zach LaVine is interesting because Zach is a true 24, 25 point a game scorer. The Bulls have been a mess. Who knows what's going to happen with DeMar DeRozan? There's a lot of things going on there. I don't know how it fits from a trade standpoint, what you'd have to give up. But I'm not sure there's a move out there that the Heat make and you say, okay, that's it. They just left. They took a big leap over Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, those teams in the East. I'm not sure what it is, Clay. I don't know what that move is, and I don't know if it truly exists. I guess Kyrie would have been the answer. But again, Kyrie came with all the other baggage.
And so let me tell you what I think the only possible solution that could lead you there is if you make one of these moves for a big guy, and whether it's Vanderbilt, whether you decide, all right, Vanderbilt is the guy that really brings everything that we need, we're going to go there. Maybe it's Olynyk. Maybe you decide, hey, we need somebody to rebound and stretch the floor at that point. We're going to go that direction, even though he's not quite the rebounder, but he does have the. Or you decide it's John Collins. I think that you could have enough internal improvement by making some tough decisions in the backcourt and getting a little lucky. And the tough decisions would be you give Victor Oladipo an expanded role. I don't know if that's starting. I don't know if you bring him.
It's a risk given his injury.
I get it. But if you're talking about what makes this team a contender, it is Victor Oladipo bringing that maniacal defensive intensity, 35 minutes a game. I know, man. I get it. Look, I know Father Time and his knees, but like because of when you look around the league and you say, what's the move that the Heat can make that can do X, Y, and Z? No. I don't see it.
Well, so Duncan and Max getting back to their level, right?
I don't see it with Duncan.
Yeah,
I don't
either. It's been 2 years. This is ongoing for 2 years now.
So that's my
Max is like a 2-month thing,
right? And that's my problem. That's my problem with the idea of like if these guys come back and they play like they did last year. Well, you pulled Max. You pulled Max Strus out of the role where he was so successful last year. You're going to put him back. You're going to put Tyler Hero on the bench.
No,
I'd be fine with that.
It's not going to happen though. They're not putting.
I get it, but I mean. Those are the types of things that are frustrating, Will, because like when you're telling me that, hey, we're going to run it back, but then you make a couple of small changes, one of which is switching out Tyler Hero for Max Strus. Hero's been fine. He hasn't like lit the world on fire, but he's been fine. He's been compared to what he was last year. I'm saying he hasn't it's been largely the same player.
Yeah,
and Strus has fallen off the map. And he's been a little bit better lately, but like he's clearly not as comfortable in that role. And I think it's because he can be more of a spot up shooter at the. So you made your team worse that way by switching those two guys. You made your team worse. The other one is, and you mentioned this with Caleb Martin. Caleb Martin would be a fantastic energy guy coming off the bench as a backup 3, but you shifted him to the 4, and so now there's essentially like he still does what he does and does it well, but it's miscast. Yeah. And so if you bring in somebody to play the 4, whether it's Vanderbilt or whatever, then that moves Caleb Martin back to the bench where he can be that energizing 3 guy.
And I think it goes back to your point on Victor. Look, I think I will say something about the Heat in the planning, right? There are a lot of fans that get frustrated with the minute distribution. I'm one of them, by the way. Just when I'm watching a game, sometimes I get frustrated when they don't bring Jimmy in. It happened in Milwaukee again over the weekend to the 6-minute mark, 6 minutes of the game in the fourth quarter in a close game. Giannis is playing. He goes nuts. The lead is up to 7-8. He, in a game that was basically tied, or 2-point game going to the fourth, is you don't make up the ground, you lose the game.
Right.
Those are frustrating moments, but there's a method to the madness. The Heat have said all along they want to keep Jimmy fresh for the playoffs. The Heat have said all along they want to keep Vic fresh for the playoffs. The Heat have said all along that that was part of the plan to be peaking into the postseason. I think the setback for the Heat is, and for Eric Spoelstra, I don't think Spo thought so many guys were going to miss so many games and so many times. I mean, it happens every game. I mean, every game there's an unexpected Gabe Vincent or somebody out. It's like, what's going on? But I do think that let's put the formula together. Get a four, whether it's Jay Crowder, whether it's Jared Vanderbilt, whether it's Kelly Olynyk, whether it's insert whatever name you want. Shift Caleb over. Have then Caleb work in that second unit along with Victor. Insert that starter in to give you starter minutes, quality minutes, play good defense, maybe improve your rebounding. Ideally help with your threes. If you can get somebody, that'd be ideal, but we'll see what the options are out there. It still leaves a gaping hole and question as to what are you doing with your primary ball handler and point guard and the defense there. Because again, Tyler Hero, to his credit, is getting better defensively. He hustles. He's being smarter on where he needs to be on the floor, but that doesn't change in any way the advantage that opposing guards have on him in their quickness and strength to go at him and score, especially the upper echelon scorers of the league. And you'll watch it in the Heat game. Teams intentionally attack Tyler. And again, Tyler is working his tail off. And Spo has mentioned it, and Tyler's working it. Tyler's gotten stronger, but he's not there yet, Clay. He's not. You couple that with Kyle Lowry, who we just said, for whatever reason, has taken this huge step back. He's a turnstile sometimes. Guards just blow by him. And you have that combination. That's not getting fixed with any of the trades we just mentioned. Or shifting over. The only thing I will say this, Clay, is what you said. Fourth quarters will be Victor Oladipo, and we were starting to see that right before Vic had this little setback where he's missed a couple of games. Kyle Lowry was not playing fourth quarters anymore.
Nope.
He had that one where he scored 9 in a hurry at home and they won a game, but since then he hasn't been playing fourth quarters. So make a move for a 4, shift Caleb to that strength of the bench, have Victor be part of your closing lineup, and pray that Max and/or Duncan get going from 3. And maybe you got something in the postseason.
Yeah, and maybe there's a world where Max gets more comfortable. But my big thing is the 1. And I know Spo knows it, which is why we're seeing Oladipo play so much in the fourth quarter. We haven't seen Kyle Lowry play. But to me, it's gotten to the point where it's so bad that the first quarter minutes and the third quarter minutes with Kyle Lowry on the floor are too much. It's too much. Yeah. So again, if you're absolutely married to Tyler Hero starting, which I wouldn't be, I get it. I understand you paid him. I would look at everything, maybe bring him off the bench and have Strus go back to where he's comfortable. If that doesn't, fine. But you have to do something with the 1 because, I cannot watch Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry on the floor at the same time anymore. It's too.
I think you need to figure that out too, especially in fourth quarters. Tyler, you need the offense. Clay, how about this? We haven't even mentioned it yet. How about the backup 5? What do you
and I guess it depends on how long they're anticipating Orlando Robinson be out. I
like Orlando, but is Orlando really going to be able to face off against some of the bigs in the postseason come, whether you have Philly or Brooklyn or Cleveland with the link that they have in the first round?
Yeah, I guess I'm seeing that as not as big of an issue. But I mean, but that gets back to, okay, then
Europe might come back. You got Europe, but again, how is he going to be after missing the entire season? Dedmon looks just like he doesn't have much left with him.
But you also, I guess what I'm saying is you might find something when you're shuffling, if you get that 4 and you're moving Caleb Martin to the bench, then you might find something where maybe you're able to get Bam a little bit more of a breather. So whatever it is, the rotation may get mixed up. I'm just saying I don't have as big of an issue with that as I do playing Kyle Lowry and Tyler Hero together at all. I'm not talking about just the 4. It is hard to watch defensively. So I think it's the most productive, successful lineup, five-man lineup for the Heat this year is Bam, Jimmy, Tyler Hero, Caleb Martin, and Gabe Vincent. Why don't you make Gabe your permanent starter?
Gabe is 4-2 as a starter. It's a very small sample size. But when you look at Gabe, when he's healthy, he can shoot, he can defend. His shooting has been a little off at times, but he's gotten a little. It seems like he's a little more comfortable. Again, they need him healthy. I'm with you. I just don't see a scenario. And again, Spo's not afraid to mix things up. I don't see a scenario where the Heat keep Kyle and he's not their starter.
Man, and that would, to me, that would be a massive mistake. And that's where,
well, I think the fourth quarter is already they've given in a little,
Yeah.
right? Like not having Kyle in fourth quarters. I don't know.
So they know.
I think priority number one from now to the deadline, which again is just a few days away, is finding a taker for Kyle. I mean, I do.
I agree.
It's not that, last year they got a game within the finals, and Kyle had his moments. And again, given all the personal stuff he went through, even entering this year, I didn't feel that bad. Most people said it was a terrible deal. They should have done it. They should have just, it wasn't worth it. I was still on board where it was worth it. But now we're, 50 plus games into this year, and the way things are looking, I think I'm okay to concede that, it wasn't worth it. It was worth to take a shot, but it wasn't worth what's ended up happening then,
Can you refresh my memory? What was the move? And there may have been two that Spo made. There was one in the bubble where they had a certain lineup in the regular season and the lead-up games, and then they switched it when they started the playoffs. And I think they've done this twice. And I guess what I'm saying with this is, I guess the hope that you hold out is if you're going to play Kyle Lowry as the starter between now and the playoffs, like you can't look at the film and tell me that he's bad enough to where you can't play him in the fourth quarter, but you can still survive minutes with him and Tyler starting.
Last year before the playoffs, they went to Max. Remember that? They switched over to Max.
Yes, but it was something involving Myers Leonard in the bubble. I can't remember if they moved Myers Leonard. Yeah, they took him out of the starting lineup.
They took him out of the starting lineup.
Right,
that was the bubble season. Yeah.
Right, that's what I mean. So what they did was they had him in the starting lineup until the playoff portion.
Again, they did the same thing with Duncan last year.
Yes.
And then Spo's not afraid to do it. I just think in Kyle's case, what does Kyle give you from when you think bench play, right? You need the spark, you need the energy, you need the shooting, the scoring. That's not Kyle. Kyle is more, his benefit is to kind of set the tone with the pace and the ball handling. And he still does that fairly well. The problem is he can't finish. He's not shooting well, and he's not defending well. Other than that, it's been great.
You asked me what he would add. It's called addition by subtraction. Like don't play him, and you're gonna.
I don't see that scenario.
Healthy,
go play him.
How many do you play in the playoffs? 8, right? Like eight a lot of minutes. So
usually 8's about as deep as
if you trade for the 4, your 3 off the bench to me would be Victor Oladipo, Max Strus, and Caleb Martin. And so that's it. And Gabe Vincent starts.
That's saying if you start Gabe,
Gabe. And I'm sorry.
There's a problem with that you have to get 9 then because you need a backup center.
That's okay.
You can't shift small. I don't think Spo would go totally small ball in the playoffs.
No, that's fine. But Kyle's not going to play center. I'm just saying, I trust those 3 guys more than what I'm seeing out of Kyle. And so if you're going to play the best players and you're going to make the hard decision, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, I have faith because I've seen Spo do this before, that he's willing to make the hard decision.
He is.
Maybe he is. And I just, it's hard to watch.
I think the key is this. As we wrap it up, the key is the deadline's coming up. The Heat, I think if you could take anything away from this podcast, if there's names we didn't say, look, Russell Westbrook, is he going to get traded? Would the Heat actually be interested in some sort of a package where they ship Kyle away? Chris Paul, you mentioned, all these kind of veterans that maybe need a change of scenery that could help you. There are a lot of wacky scenarios. It doesn't matter what names we said. The point is this that you need to take away. The Heat have to make a move. The Heat cannot. They went in with the run it back theory, which I had no problem with, to try the run it back theory. Guess what? It didn't work. It didn't work to the extent.
It ran over them.
Yeah, it didn't work to the extent of where you're going to win a championship. And there's only one reason the Heat build anything. There's only one reason they got Jimmy Butler. There's only one reason they re-signed Tyler Hero. There's only one reason that Bam is a 2-time All-Star now and one of the elite young players in the league, because you want to win championships. And if they don't make a move, Clay, I don't think this roster, as is, even full health, is a NBA championship team right now. I just don't think so. Could they win a round in the playoffs? Could they sneak and make a second-round series interesting? Absolutely. Could they win an NBA championship? I don't think so as constructed. Maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but I don't think so.
And Will, who set that standard?
Maybe Pat.
Pat Riley.
That's all they care about.
So, people who talk about, you're being overly critical. Well, no, this is when Pat Riley says this is what we're going, and that he doesn't want any less than that.
Yeah.
you're saying you look at this roster, I don't see a championship team. I don't think he does either. So I'm with you. I think they're probably looking
By the way,
at it
Clay,
the same way.
I'm glad you said what you said because I will say one thing with fans, and that's what I hope that in no way do people think that I'm being critical in as far as what the Heat expect and then making it seem like you're because I think too often fans don't understand how lucky they are with this franchise.
Right.
It's like, oh, bow down to Pat Riley. Look, Pat makes mistakes. Pat has made mistakes. Pat has made moves and not made moves that have cost the team opportunities, but he's aggressive. He tries to do things. They try to put themselves in position. It's not as easy. It takes two to tango. It's not as easy as like, oh, go get Kevin Durant. Oh, go get this guy. It's not that easy. But Pat's always trying to put the team in position. But I will say this, you got to stop being such an entitled fan where if you don't win the championship, your franchise stinks. You know what I mean? This organization is a elite organization and try to win. They're still a contender. They're still in the mix. They were one shot away from the NBA Finals. But for the purpose of this discussion, we're thinking like Pat Riley thinks.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
Being the sixth seed in the East and one and done in the playoffs, being the team they were 2 seasons ago that looked like it was peaking going into the playoffs and had all this like Jimmy saying he's what was the term that he used? What was the word he used?
Ridiculously locked in or like stupidly
locked in.
Yeah, yeah.
And that team, and then they get swept. Following the bubble year, and then last year getting a shot. This team is always trying to work things. Spo's always trying to work things. So stop giving me Riley's washed. He stinks. He's falling asleep. He's not. Trust me, they're not. But it's just not that easy to flip like that, and then you make a deal and you become a contender. But I think we both agree, whatever magic Pat Riley has and Andy has, and they can figure out, they need to figure it out in the next few days.
Yep. Let's do it. Hey, I think it's going to be active. I think they're going to do something. I think we'll feel better come Friday.
All right. Next Sunday, we'll relive this pod and we'll maybe have a better conversation as to where.
And we'll say, Pat is washed. Andy doesn't know what he's doing.
We'll just scroll people yelling on Heat Twitter and sending memes and adding us and calling us homers and idiots.
It'll be the whole thing.
Thank you, Heat Twitter. And that's your Bible Sports Club.